What's up, traders, and welcome back to Uplift Markets. This week, the markets have been pretty volatile, and many of us are tempted to buy the dip. But let's take a closer look at the recent developments before making any moves. So, let's get started. As we know, the recent news have had significant implications for the market, with the US imposing tariffs of up to 145% on Chinese imports, aiming to boost domestic manufacturing. In retaliation, China has increased tariffs on US goods to a staggering 125% and halted exports of rare earth elements, crucial for electronics and defense industries. Now, NVIDIA is also facing a $5.5 billion revenue hit due to its new US restrictions on exporting its H20 AI chips to China, which were made specifically for the Chinese market. Now, these developments are suggesting that caution is warranted. But setting aside the news, let's look at the price action, which, as we know, price action is king. I'm going to start off with the daily chart of the S&P 500. For that, we're going to go to the ETF, the SPY. Now, analyzing this, we have failed key area of support, which has been the 50 EMA. We're still below that, showing that collectively, sellers are still in control. Now, if we plot an anchored VWAP, swing high from where the sellers came in, right? We were all-time highs here, and then we just had this dip. Sellers obviously came in, right? So we're going to measure their average price of entry, which in this case was around 550, and we are clearly below that, so obviously they are in the money, right? Now, we're also going to plot an anchored VWAP from the year 2024, which is a beginning, in a way, of this extreme bullishness, right, in the bull market, right? So, it is this line right here, this light red line, and we obviously failed below it, but buyers came in. We had this nice little rally, and I believe this was a historical rally that we had where Trump said that he would pause around 90 days, the tariffs. We had this nice move to the upside, right? But currently right now, we're still below the 50 EMA and the swing high anchored VWAP and the 2024 anchored VWAP, showing that collectively, the people who have bought since those dates are losing money, and the people who are short are winning money. So in this case, we are in a short-term trend, right? We have the shorter-term trend fighting versus a longer-term trend, which has been bullish, as we know. Now, something interesting that I noted here was that if we plot an anchored VWAP, now measuring the buyers that came in here, right? We have label it green. We are right at that level, right here. Now, the thing here is we always want to favor the longer-term trend, and in this case, we are in a short downtrend, right? So what does this mean? Usually, the continuation will be towards that trend. So, if the buyers that came in at this low, right, this little bounce, which is measured by this VWAP, fail to hold the green anchored VWAP, then we will be seeing further downside of the overall market, especially here at SPY, towards, I believe, the bottom at 481. And if we go back and analyze recent support levels towards here, 466 level, right? Now, those levels are areas that the buyers can come in after they lose the control, right? And something that we clearly want to note is that this has happened before, right? If you guys, let's take this off. If you guys look at this, right, before that, right here, right? So we had the sellers coming in, right, and the buyers coming in, right? So in this place, we were pinching, which is exactly what's happening right now. There's a battle between the buyers and sellers. We're going like that. And then we had this nice move up, this rally, just like the one we're seeing right now. Then we came to where the sellers came in, and then they kept shorting it. Boom. So we declined, right? Boom, 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 boom. And the selling was so aggressive that we eventually overwhelmed the buyers and had this decline here towards obviously 481, right? this is something that is repeating itself again, right? By plotting that anchored VWAP right there, that green, we're having the same thing. We're pinching, shows indecision between the buyers and sellers, right? Now, we also want to look at a longer term time frame, which in this case would be the weekly. And as we see, we are below the 50 MA, and we have not been below the 50 MA ever since, if we go back, that's how long it's been. We were below the 50 MA, we closed below it on February 2022. Exactly on this date right here, right? So if we measure the move that we had before, we had that bounce, right, that reversal now. Here we measure towards the bottom that we had, which was around a 19.77% downside move before we found buyers, or we can approximately say 20%. So let's assume that we have that same case here before we find buyers again. So if you measure the move, we close below, it's at 19%. We still have several ways to go if this is going to continue towards the downside. And the support area before we bounce will be approximately 448. And if this case happens, I'll possibly be short the market towards those levels of 448 before we find that bounce. Now, another major index that we should be looking out for should be the NASDAQ. And for that, we'll be looking at the overall ETF that tracks it, which is a triple Q, right? And in this case, we have the same thing on a daily chart, right? Same thing. We had that nice thing and it broke. See, like the trends are exactly the same, right? We're below the 50, pretty bearish. Below swing high and VWAP, pretty bearish. And below the 2024 and VWAP. We're below those three, it's bearish. Obviously, we saw a bounce, and we can obviously measure again the buyers that came in at this level and see we're seeing the same thing. If the buyers fail to hold this case, then the $439 level, then we will see support towards the $402 level. We zoom out to other areas of support, towards here, the $394 level, and if it's extremely bearish, then towards the $383 level, right? Sometimes we have to detach ourselves from the news and look at the price action. What is the market actually telling us, right? We have to follow those trends and not just go by our bias of being, hey, I want to buy the dip and it's going to bounce here. The market doesn't care about our emotions, and if it were, then it would be a totally different type of trading game, right? So now that we see that we are in a short-term downtrend, we identified the trend, let's go to a longer-term weekly to have that confirmation, right? Obviously, the longer-term time frames have more power than the shorter-term time frames, as we know. So that's why we're going to a weekly. And again, we are below the 50 EMA, and we haven't been below it, I believe, on NASDAQ for a long time, actually. I have to zoom out. Zoom back. Yep. We haven't been below it since right here, since January of 2022. Absolutely amazing. Approximately 3 years back then. So if you measure from where we found the buyers, we found this bounce right here. It was a decline of 28%, right? So now let's go over here. And since we're below the 50, we can apply the same measurement to get this idea. Obviously, it may not go down that far, or it may go down even further. We don't know, but we're assuming based on past price data that has confirmed that, right? So we measure this, and it's going to be 28% around there. So the next, if we have that same quality or same, I guess, intensity of that downside move, we will see the support towards 342, which is a long way down from here, actually, right? We are currently at around 470 and down 342. That would be a big move to the downside, right? So down 28%. So that's why we firmly believe that we should not be buying the dip right now. The only way to be long and be able to buy the dip, actually, is to see strength after the dip, right? We want to see, what we would have liked to see is this. So we have this bounce, right? So we've been selling. We have a nice bounce. We'd like to see is this pullback and eventually have the price action rebound from that, form a little higher low, and shoot, right? So we would have to get above this the swing high anchor. Well, the sellers came in the red one, but it would slowly start rising up. We would have to get above it, and obviously above now the 50 MA, which would show us that the trend has reversed and the buyers are now in control. Having this in mind, we can have our stops at the most recent and relevant higher lows, which would be in this case right here, this one, this higher low, or our stop exclusively if you want more risk towards this one, right? And that would be the only case that we would be long in the market. We'd have to get above this swing high anchor VWAP from the sellers came in, right? Proving that they are collectively, on average, losing money, and now the buyers are gaining control because they came here at this precise level, right? So that would be the only case, but that would require more manpower, and overall it's very difficult, very small percentage that the overall trend is reversed. It does happen, but on a longer term time frame, it does need more volume and more bidding, right? On a shorter term time frame, 1 minute, 5 minute chart, you do see those pretty rapid reversals, right? So something that we should consider is always look at the price action. Don't just follow the news, as the price action is always king. So some of the strategies moving forward now are that, in the light of the current market conditions, we should be avoiding making the impulsive, buy the dip decisions, right? We should be monitoring key support levels and wait for the confirmation before entering the trades. And we should be staying informed about ongoing trade developments and their potential impact on the market. And as always, patience and diligence are key in navigating this environment. And if you found this analysis helpful, please like and subscribe for more in-depth market analysis. You can always join the Uplift Markets newsletter, which is linked in the description. And as always, stay informed, stay strategic, and don't let the market whip you out. I'll see you guys on the next one.